So today we are delighted to speak to executive coach and mentor Zoë Cousens, a true expert in her field and advocate for women's financial empowerment. Having accomplished a long career in finance and wealth management, Zoë set her sights on consulting and spent time assisting female founders and founded the Women's Investment Network to teach women money management skills. Now she is an award-winning speaker, a trainer, and an executive coach in her field. We speak to her today to trace her journey and gain a little more insight into the changes she brings about in women's lives. So a great big welcome to you, Zoë. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Angela. It's good to be here.
So I'm super excited to dive straight in. I want to find out about your London Stock Exchange experience. I mean, that is really interesting. You were the first woman working at the London Stock Exchange, weren't you?
Yes, well, I was one of the first women, but having said that, I think there was only maybe 3 or 4 of us at the time. And in an enormous stock exchange trading floor of several hundred men, I think, at any given time. I
Wow.
don't think we ever actually used to even see each other if we weren't there. So yeah, that was a great experience for a young girl from the small island of Guernsey.
How old are you when you were at the Stock Exchange?
Just 24, actually. So I'd finished my college studies. I went to Hong Kong to work for 6 months, which is where I started my journey in the financial world. And then I came home back to Guernsey, which is where I started working for the stockbroking firm. And I decided that I really enjoyed the work, but in order to really succeed and make it my career, I wanted to find out all about it. So I wanted to know how everything worked. So I asked if I could sort of join various different departments and then sort of decide, which one suited me best. And so they kindly accommodated me with that, and that's how I ended up, on the trading floor of the stock exchange for a while, as I found out really the most important part about obviously being a stockbroker was actually trading the shares.
Okay. And is it like you see in the movies, a whole bunch of people on the trading floor shouting, and or is it not like that?
It's not quite. So the one that you see in the movies is more the commodities exchange, where they've all got the coloured jackets and they're all waving their arms.
Yes, yes.
The actual stock exchange was much more, how shall I say?
Civilized?
The men were really in their pinstripe suits. I was very careful, of course, about what I was wearing as a young
Mm.
girl down there in the on the exchange floor to look obviously always professional, particularly when you're surrounded by the men who are all looking so super professional themselves. But it was yeah, much quieter. So it's a case of approaching the jobbers. So the jobbers were the guys who are making the market or making the price in the stocks and shares. And I mean, in those days, it was quite a long procedure.
Mm.
We'd be downstairs underneath the stock exchange floor in what was called the boxes, because they were literally like rooms the size of a box with the
Wow.
old-fashioned telephones all across the wall. And in order to do a deal in those days, the stockbroker would be in the office speaking to his client. Maybe he recommends to buy a share. They call through to the box. I go up to the stock exchange floor. I literally run around. I took
Really?
3 different jobbers probably to ask them what the price they will give us without giving away whether I'm buying or selling, of course, because then they would
Oh, wow.
know,
Yes.
to move the price. And then I go back down to the box, ring the stockbroker who rings his client, then they ring me back. I go back up to the
Wow.
floor and do the deal. So you can imagine nowadays that's all done on the press of a button.
Yes, just one click. So you must have got quite fit then, having to run up and down.
Yeah, it was quite hard work, but yeah, it was great fun and really taught me so many skills actually that have been useful for the rest of my career.
Yes. And were there any challenges around being one of the few women when it was a very male-dominated industry?
And it's interesting that back in I'm talking about the late 1980s now, and phrases such as, glass ceilings and gender equality and all of these sorts of things that we talk about, on a daily basis now, weren't really, discussed. And it seems strange now that when I went into the exchange, it wasn't really a big deal in my mind because it wasn't something,
Mm.
for me, it was just a job. something that I was really looking forward to, and a fantastic experience, which it was. And to be honest as well, it was only relatively recently that I started telling people about that, because it seems to be more relevant now in a way, because it's a topic of conversation that we have.
Yes.
The challenge is really, I guess, well, as I say, I was always very aware that, I was in the vast minority. I did think before I joined the exchange that the older guys would maybe have a little resentment. But in actual fact, it was the other way around. The older guys were delighted to see a few women, on the exchange floor. They thought it was great. I probably had more issues, if you like, with the younger guys, of course, which, who like to have a little bit of fun, put it that way, and a little bit of and a bit of joking as you were going down. Yeah, so yes, exactly. You're right, Angela, and it was the opposite to how I'd thought about it
Very
before.
interesting.
But certainly taught me, again, a lot about standing on my own 2 feet, and about networking, which, is a topic that I talk about quite a lot.
Yes. I often wonder if we don't make issues. And what I mean is, I'm not saying that they don't exist. There were, in some cases, gender bias. Some men misbehaved. But like you say, I was in the construction industry, predominantly, men. And I was never aware or never felt like I was a woman in a male-dominated industry. I just felt like I was a woman doing a job, and there were more men. It was never an issue. I never felt held back by it. And I didn't pay any attention to it. Now, I wonder if we haven't sometimes made issues where it's not necessary. Like you saying you just got on with it. I just got on with it. What would I do differently now with all those terms? Would I put myself in a box? And you know what I mean? Like, are we making unnecessary drama as women? Shouldn't we just still be getting on with it?
Yeah, it's, obviously it's a big topic, but I do agree with you in some respects that, and it was necessary, obviously, to draw attention to some of the bad behavior.
Yes, the bad behavior, definitely.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I think in some respects it could be a little bit detrimental to us. So we've, like some things, where we've gone a little bit too far, and maybe made more of it than was necessary. But that's just, as we know, society and life changes, and different views of different generations and so on. And but yeah, I agree in principle with what you're saying. And I think by just getting on with it, I think, and it's all about boundaries as well, isn't it? And I think that's an important thing. So I've always worked in teams of men. And the main thing that I've said is, look, here's my red line. And they've always respected that, And I think you do have to have a sense of humor as well, I think
Absolutely.
we can't, yeah. So that, I mean, that's quite a big thing as well. But I'm lucky, yeah, I've really enjoyed, I've had a fantastic and enjoyable career in what is still very much a man's world, although I'm delighted that, to see some younger women now, yeah, getting involved.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, and especially at Women's Business Club, we talk more about being the woman of choice, because you're the best choice, not because you're a woman and you tick in some corporate box, but really, improving yourself and being the best choice for whatever position you're going for, because you've done the courses or because you have the right attitude or whatever. And so we tend not to talk too much around what those sorts of controversial issues, but more about how can we be the best version of ourselves, show up as a woman, at business or at work, and just be the woman of choice. And so that's kind of my take on it. Like you say, and not disregarding that there are genuine issues. There is bullying, there is bad behavior, but also just not to focus so much on, oh, I'm a woman, poor me, or or gender biases, but just how can I be the best? Yeah, how can I be the best I can be?
Yeah, and in my coaching business, I do unfortunately, come across women bullying other women, which is always so disappointing.
Yes.
I do think that we should be there to support each other. And I find that's one of the most disappointing things that I come across, is when a woman is being bullied by another woman. We should be supporting and helping each other.
Yes.
That's quite a big issue, actually, bigger than people realize.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something we should address. Absolutely. You know, that's something we should be talking about, perhaps. I'm glad you brought that up. So, back to your journey. What prompted you to create your first company? Was it Castellet
Yeah,
Consulting?
Castellet Consulting.
Castellet.
So that was, in actual fact, so when I decided to move to Dubai in 2014, which was really a bit of well, it was a complete epiphany moment. My marriage had come to an end. I was feeling heartbroken, and my son had been traveling. So I asked him if he fancied a little bit of five-star luxury on the way back from Thailand, which of course he did. And we met each other in Dubai for holiday. And it was while I was there, I actually gave myself a bit of a talking to. I was like, come on, get on with your life. And and I was on the beach looking around me, and I thought, "Oh, I love it here. I think I could live here." And in that nanosecond, I thought, well, why not? I was 52 at the time. So, I mean, my age is sort of relevant because it was now or never. If I didn't do it then I knew that, that I wouldn't. And so, yes, I was fortunate, with all of my investment knowledge and having worked in finance for so many years, I knew that I would be able to get a job. But then I thought, actually, why not see if I can set up my own company? So what I did was I was working for a law firm at the time as an in-house investment consultant for them. And so I said to them, I'm moving to Dubai. And I said, how about this? I said, if I set up my own company, then you can become my client instead of me being your employee. So we literally just switched things around. And so that's the reason I set up the company, but also because having the corporate structure there meant that that gave me my residency visa as well.
Okay. And I'm sure there were tax benefits as well, weren't there, for you having your own company there?
Yeah, well, at the time there was no tax at all, so it didn't really make any difference whether I was in a corporate or as an individual. There wouldn't have been any tax. But to be honest, that actually didn't figure in my thoughts at all. It was really a lifestyle choice, to be honest, for me.
Yes.
Because none of my clients were in the UAE at the time. Living in the Channel Islands, all of my clients were either in the Channel Islands or I had a couple in London. And actually, I ended up with one in Monaco, but actually none in the UAE. The reason that I was there was purely because I loved it.
Exactly.
When I moved there, yeah, I mean, I love the sunshine, but also it had a buzz about it, which it still does, where you feel that anything is possible. And so it was purely, really, as I say, for lifestyle reasons that I moved.
How long did you stay there?
I stayed for 4 years. I still go back very often, probably about 3 times a year. My son came out with me and was working there, but then he was offered a really good job at home. So we decided, it was better for him to come home. So I stayed on for a while, but I was missing him. And so I decided to come back home to Guernsey after 4 years. But as I say, I still spend a big piece of my heart out there. And so I still spend a lot of time there. Yeah.
So, what made you feel the need to assist female founders and start the Women Investment Network?
Sure. So while I was living in Dubai, I was fortunate to be asked to be a judge on something called the Mompreneurs, which, as it sounds, is a course actually for women, young women who want to start their own businesses and they have a business idea. And at the end of it, it's a little bit like the UK's Dragon's Den. There is some judges at the end, and they pitched their ideas to us. So there were 3 of us who used to be the judges. And that was how I first became involved and realized how many inspirational women there are out there setting up their own businesses, doing amazing things, with stepping right out of their comfort zones and, being very courageous. And I just loved it. I loved being in touch with these young women. And so it's something I've continued to do. And also, I mean, there's the horrible statistic that it's anything between 1% and 2% of funding goes to female founders. I mean, it's just shocking. Yeah, absolutely shocking. And some women have a man as a co-founder, just because it helps them. Yeah, exactly, because it helps them to get the funding. I mean, it's so shocking, it's unbelievable. And it's improved slightly, but not enough. Look, if it improves from 1 to 2%, I mean, that's still a ridiculously low figure.
It's very
So yeah, there's a very big ecosystem of women supporting other women actually in that respect, which is lovely. So I'm part of a group in Dubai and also in London and in Guernsey as well. So yeah, it's lovely. Whatever sort of support, usually it's some business advice, and I do help with some capital raising as well whenever I can.
Okay, that's really good. That's something that we're also focusing a lot on at Women's Business Club, is to shift that number. So we're coming up with a few, solutions that we're going to try, because that number is it's too low. It's far too low. And so what made you decide to study for a master's?
Yeah, well, after my very long career in investing, I decided that 40 years was pretty good going, and I wanted to do something else. But I wanted to continue to work for myself. And I've done a lot of coaching and mentoring, as we do, particularly as we get a little bit older. And I decided to formalize it, really. So, I mean, coaching isn't a regulated industry, but I decided that I wanted to have a qualification. I mean, I have some things to learn. Like, I mean, I didn't know everything about it. And so I wanted to make sure that I had, sufficient knowledge in order to practice, to the best of my ability, in order to help my clients, as best I could. And so, yeah, I learned a lot, of course. So far, I've passed the theory and the practice. I have a bit of pro bono work to do, just to finish it off. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And I mean, the beauty, of course, of being online as well is that it's not quite so good. But I mean, the quality of the online sessions is so good now that that it's fine. I say that because actually, as it happens, both of my first two coachees were actually based in the UAE, funnily enough. So yeah, and it sort of doesn't really make any difference, but it's nice to at least meet once, though. So I always try to do that.
Yeah, it is different meeting in person. Now, just to inspire other women out there, what age did you start doing your master's at?
62.
I just asked because that is amazing. So many people, they get older and they're like, oh, I'm too old now, I'm too old. But actually, you can do anything at any age.
My granddad, he did a computer course at 82.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, I have to learn how to use these things.
Yeah, good for
It's
him.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think the thing is that we're a little bit conditioned, of course, because the retirement age is still in your 60s. But of course, the retirement ages were set, post Second World War in the 40s. And when people actually were only living until maybe they were 70. But of course, now we're living so much longer. And so, I mean, that was one of the things with me. I mean, I love learning and I love traveling and I love to be active and doing things. So that was part of it. But also my grandmother and my great grandmother both lived until their late 90s. I mean, for my great grandmother in those days, that was really quite something. So, perhaps I'm touching wood here. I may have another 40 years.
That's a whole lifetime.
It's a long time, right?
Yeah.
So I really wanted to learn a new skill. I'm fortunate, and this is part of the reason I set up the Women's Investment Network. I have so much knowledge and experience to share. And particularly, I do a lot of work with women on, managing their money. And so I'm fortunate to have all of this knowledge. And I decided, that this is the time of my life where I want to be giving back and sharing, really.
Mm-hmm. And looking back over your amazing career and life, what would you say has been the biggest challenge? What area did you really struggle in?
Yeah, I think setting up your own business is a struggle. I mean, when I first set up my business when I moved to Dubai, which was the first time I'd had my own business, I mean, I did have quite a few contracts, but obviously I went out to find the contracts. But of course, with contract work, sometimes it's coming to a natural end once you've completed it. And so that was a bit of a struggle in terms of, okay, so I need to be finding some more work to replace that, which I knew was going to happen. But, you know, you don't have the security is what I'm saying, you know, obviously of the regular income, but obviously you have other benefits instead. So I think that's the main challenge, but I wouldn't swap working for myself, although, you know, it's nice to have a regular income in the workplace. But again, I mean, at my age, you know, to be honest, I don't like to keep harping on about my age, but it's much more difficult for us to get jobs. And this is another big topic, actually, Angela, that I'm sure you've been reading about as well, is, you know, how we're a little bit discarded over 50 and we've got all this knowledge and experience that people don't seem to value as much as they could. And it's quite a big topic of conversation now, which I'm following with interest, actually, because we have got a lot to give. And we're not as old as people think we are.
Exactly. Well, I turned, I'm in my 50s, and I've started to realize that it's not that old.
Exactly.
I think it was so old, but I haven't started yet.
But I actually published an article this week on Elite Business Magazine, exactly looking at that, women over 50, and the value they bring to the workforce, and just challenging people, you know, on their mindset towards women over 50. And so that,
we've already overcome many challenges as well. Actually, I'd like to read that article. But so it's interesting, and actually I'm pleased that it's being talked about now, at least. So let's.
Well, the older I get, the more I'm like, we need to talk about this. You know, you don't really value something until you go through it yourself. I mean, we're not going to get onto it now, but there's the whole menopause conversation. Like, that was something I was oblivious about. And suddenly it, you know, happens to me. I'm like, we have to talk about this. And so there's a lot we need to talk about. But let's talk about you. So you're also a speaker, a regular speaker at international events, conferences and summits. And with all your experience and, you know, all of your wisdom and knowledge, do you still get nervous when you have to speak?
A little bit of adrenaline, I think, is very good.
Yes.
But it's something I really enjoy doing. And I think as long as you know, this is probably stating the obvious a little bit, but as long as you know what you're talking about, then, I mean, I can't say I don't get nervous. I can't speak to anyone for sort of 10 minutes beforehand because I'm sort of getting in the zone.
In the zone,
As I say, the adrenaline is good because that gives you that push and so on. But I think one of the nicest things is when you have an audience, you know, who are asking questions and feeding back to you, because that's such a nice feeling. So I couldn't say I don't get nervous, but the time I was most nervous actually was when a law firm in Dubai asked me if I'd like to speak at one of their events. It was a gala event for women. And I was so used to being asked to speak about being a woman in business, a woman in investing, and all of these sorts of things. I just said, oh, yes, I'd love to. And then when the flyer advertising it came around with a big photo of me and keynote speaker, Zoë Cousens will be speaking about how to invest in art. And I thought, my first reaction, of course, was, oh, I can't do it. But I don't really like to be like that. You know, I like to try and be positive. And anyway, I know everyone had already received, you know, it had all been advertised. So this is where my network came in handy, actually, because again, going back to my stock exchange days, you know, I had to learn in those days just to walk up to people and say hello and start conversations. So I'd done that for my whole career. And I remembered meeting some art specialists probably about 2 years before, but I'd kept it. And it just goes to show I'd kept the info and the contact. And I messaged the guys and said, help, basically. And they were fantastic. You know, they sent me all sorts of info, really interesting. So actually, I learned quite a lot myself. There's part of it, of course, investing is investing. So I sort of could talk about that. And luckily on the panel with me was a young lady called Rose Balston, who's been on the BBC and Sky News talking about art because she's a specialist. So I took a deep breath and I felt as if I probably knew enough to answer some basic questions, but I also knew that Rose would be able to answer the more complicated, specific ones. And so that was my probably most scary moment. But anyway, so it went fine, and there were a few of my friends in the audience, and when I came off the stage, they all said to me, "Oh, we would never have known you didn't know what you were talking about."
That's good. Good feedback.
I had that once. I was on a panel, and the host asked me a question, and I didn't know what he was talking about, and I just answered something completely irrelevant. Just just kind of skirted past it and said something else because I didn't want to look silly.
Probably nobody noticed either.
Probably, I hope so. So last question. At Women's Business Club, we're dedicated to fostering a community of collaboration and support. It's very important to us. Is there any woman in particular that you'd like to thank for helping you in your business journey?
It's an interesting question, Angela, and it's one, of course, that I've been asked before. And I have to say, actually, that I've always had to stand on my own 2 feet since quite a young age. And so I've always sorted everything out for myself. It's not necessarily a good thing. In some respects, of course, it is. It's taught me a lot. But yeah, I've always really just had to get on with it myself, to be honest. And and I've thought about this question before because I have been asked it, and I can't really think of an answer. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think, I mean, I remember sitting on a panel once, and the other 3 ladies who were on the panel with me all said, I couldn't have done it without my mother or my father or my husband or something. And I think, yeah, okay, fair enough. That's lovely. But when it came to me, I gave the same answer, actually. And I think it's quite important, really, because I said, look, actually, I haven't ever had anyone to support me, but, I've managed to achieve a few things. And I think it's important, for people, particularly maybe some of the younger women out there, to know that, you can do it. You can do it, if you can find the strength and the resilience and the courage to do it. I mean, in my case, because it was a bit sink or swim in a way, if you like, and I've reaped enormous benefits from it. I mean, I do have a fantastic group of friends, from that viewpoint, who support me when, we're all a bit up and down sometimes, and I know that they'll be there for me if I'm having a bit of a wobble moment, which we have sometimes. But particularly business-wise, yeah, I've just sort of gone out there and done it.
Yeah.
It can be quite a lonely journey, though. There's this whole saying of how, leaders are like eagles. You're just soaring up there alone. It's just all the chickens that are together down on the ground sort of thing. And it can be quite a lonely journey. And often I've even found in my journey, there's nobody next to me. There's nobody I can, really reach out to at particular stages. So you just have to, like you say, get on with it. So...
And it's not such a bad thing because it still teaches you quite a lot. It teaches you to be dependent on yourself, which can be a good thing. But yeah, I do think it's quite an important message to say to people, you can do it.
You can do it. Agreed. Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And certainly a few people have said to me that they've been pleased to hear me say that, because they're in a similar position, and sometimes they worry that they won't be able to manage. But I always say, yeah, you can, you will.
Yeah,
make it work.
It's refreshing, I agree, because I've interviewed hundreds of women, and you're the first person to not say, I had my mother or my sister or my or a mentor or whatever. And I think there are women out there that do need to hear that. Agreed. But hopefully through Women's Business Club, we can also provide a network, and hopefully we can connect people so that it is less lonely as well. I think it can be both and.
Yeah.
So let's end on that note. You can do it. It's a great note to end on.
Actually, yes, it is.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah. So if people want to connect with you, where do you recommend they go to?
Well, I had 3 brands, but that was too confusing. So they're all under my name now. So my website is zoecousens.com. So it's Cousens with an E. I always have to say COUSENS. zoecousens.com, and that's got some information mostly about my coaching and a little bit about the help with the female founders as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It was lovely to chat with you.
Good to chat to you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.